Well, I didn't think we can do it. We're in the second week of January, and we're out of movies to watch for the next 10, 12 days or something.
6 days. He's really dramatic.
Did you see the movie we're going to see in 6 days? So we figured we'd do something a little different. And something I haven't seen out there yet. And because I've achieved a great accomplishment of actually knowing the killers of this film right away, my little brain started going off like a pinball machine. Because I started seeing all these Easter eggs. So that's what we're going to talk about on this episode.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Your brain's not little. It's just easily distracted.
Anyway, welcome back to another episode of the Popcorn Confessional. And this is Dave from Nerdbox. And I am accompanied by my wife, Jen, also from Nerdbox. And on this episode, we are talking Easter eggs for Scream 2022, Scream 5, however you want to refer to it as. So fire up that Jiffy Pop and meet us in the booth. Now, before we begin, remember, as we go through this list and we get towards the end, there are going to be spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie yet, you may want to come back to this after you have seen the movie. And I think a lot of interesting facts that we're going to cover here, including some characters that aren't related to OGs.
25th anniversary of Scream, which was released in 1996. Scream 5 releases 25 years and 25 days after Scream 1. In the opening scene, we meet Tara Carpenter, a nod to director John Carpenter. Ghostface calls Tara and introduces himself as Charlie. As we all know, Charlie was one of the killers from Scream 4. As Tara and Ghostface talk, he mentions that he knows her mom from a group where they talk about a lot of horror movies. Charlie ran the cinema club with Robbie. As their conversation continues, Tara begins playing with a butcher knife in the knife holder, just like Casey Becker does during Scream 1 while she's talking to Ghostface.
Now, during this scene, Tara is texting with her friend, Amber Freeman. Now, while Amber, as we learn, is not connected to the Scream OGs, her name comes from screenwriter James Vanderbilt's wife. Now, Tara has to go through the classic 3 rounds of trivia with Ghostface on the original stab to spare Amber's life. Tara asks if the trivia could be on films that she's familiar with. The Witch, Hereditary, and before this, she had name-dropped The Babadook as her favorite horror movie.
But apparently we've been pronouncing it wrong all along.
Oh, really?
Because she said The Babadook.
Oh, maybe it's that and Babadook, Babashit. I don't know. I just hate the movie. It's very painful for me to watch, and maybe because of the kid throwing the tantrum. I don't know. Ghostface stumps Tara on one of the questions where he asks who played Casey Becker. Smart thinking on Tara's part. She looks up the cast on her cell phone and scrolls through a list on IMDb where she sees that Heather Graham played Casey Becker. On that phone, we also see Tori Spelling's name for Sid, Luke Wilson for Billy, Craig Bierko for Cotton, and Vince Vaughn for Stu.
Casey Becker didn't have that luxury in 1996.
This is true. We also see that Dewey was played by David Schwimmer, who many might know as Ross from Friends, and he was Courtney Cox's brother on that show. Another name that sticks out on that list is Alicia Silverstone, who plays Tatum in the Stab movies. In Scream 1, we get to hear that exchange between Stu and Randy where...
Here goes my chance with Sid. Damn it.
As if. That's all I'm saying. As if.
Oh, really, Alicia? As if.
We also see Jennifer Jolie's name as the actress who played Gail. Jolie's character is from Scream 3. When Ghostface attacks Tara, Ghostface sits over top of Tara and stabs her through the hand, just like Ghostface stabs Olivia in Scream 4. The next morning, Tara's sister is called from a 707 area code for Woodsboro. This is the area code for Santa Rosa, where the original Scream was filmed.
That bowling alley really exists. And interesting note, it is in Cape Fear, North Carolina.
Yes, so that is another interesting little thing, just because it kind of screams horror. When we meet the new clique of friends at Woodsboro High, the principal announces a town curfew and the school closure via the PA system, like Principal Arthur Himbry did in the original Scream film.
I would like to have seen one of the kids been related to him.
Yeah, because he was badass. I liked him.
You could have called him the Fonz.
Exactly. Now we meet the Meeks twins, and Amber and Wes Hicks. As we know, Wes is in honor of Wes Craven, the director of the first 4 films.
Now we all know this is not the first time that Wes has been used in Scream or Carpenter. In Scream 1, after school is let out, we see Sydney and Tatum on the porch talking about the murders.
Duck other said, you're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick or something.
We meet another non-OG character. Well, sort of. Liv McKenzie is a reference to Casey Becker's death. If we remember, after Casey's parents returned home in part 1, they discovered that the house was ransacked. And Casey's father tells his wife to drive down the street to the McKenzies. Chad mentions he's not pulling an OJ. This is a reference to being a black male suspect. If you grew up in the 90s, you're going to know what we're talking about. Chad is played by Mason Gooding, the son of Cuba Gooding Jr., who played OJ.
That's a good Easter egg.
That
I
is.
like that one.
When Vince arrives on campus, Chad, Liv's boyfriend, flexes his biceps at Vince, calling them Hobbs and Shaw. I don't know if Hobbs and Shaw has any cast members, writers, or directors that are directly connected to this film. Found it interesting. Or...
maybe he just wants to be big and bad like The Rock and Jason Statham.
Now, Sam is on her way to the hospital to see her sister. The first ever survivor of an opening scene of Scream. I think that's very important to talk about. Never happened before. Tara's a badass. During that drive, Richie references some films. Halloween and the Friday the 13th films. The first street sign we see as they enter a town in Woodsboro is Elm Street. Of course, referring to Nightmare on Elm Street, another Wes Craven film.
Tara's friends meet up at the bar later that night, where we meet Vince Schneider, who we later learn is the nephew of Stu Macher. He has a tattoo of Jason's mask on his bicep.
I really like him as an actor. He needs to do some more stuff.
Kyle Gallner.
Yeah.
I love him. I think that he is really underrated and doesn't get utilized enough.
Yeah, he doesn't. He is very underrated.
And I always find that when they do put him in something, they tend to quickly kill him off. And I don't understand why. Ghostface confronts Vince with his own car to a familiar tune, Red Right Hand, by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, a song that has been played throughout this franchise. The next day, Sam calls Richie at the motel. We see Richie watching a YouTube video on Stab 8. In the thumbnail recommendations, there is an interview with Woodsboro survivor Kirby Reed. The YouTube video features James A. Janice and his fiancée Chelsea critiquing Stab 8. James and Chelsea are from the real YouTube channel Dead Meat, which covers body counts for horror films.
If you haven't seen the channel, go check it out. Which brings me to mention, it is the quest for 1,000 subscribers, and we need your help. That's right. How do you help us? By subscribing to the channel. If you watch our videos because they show up on your YouTube feed, doesn't mean you are subscribed. So check the button. Click it if it says subscribe. Make sure that it says subscribed. And then, once we hit the 1,000 mark, you have a chance to win some money.
$100 worth of money.
Yes. Imagine what I'll give away when we hit 1,000 and we try to shoot for 5,000.
Why don't we just give it all away?
I tried. I was talked off the ledge by her and our other content creators.
Because he's insane.
Anyway,
and insane people get talked off ledges. Just saying.
Anyway, let's get back to some Easter eggs. In the hospital, after Sam has arrived, we see her wearing Billy Loomis's signature white t-shirt.
Definitely saw that in the movie. I was like, oh, look at that. She dresses like Daddy.
Yes, she does. And she's just a little nuts. Ghostface calls her at the hospital, and an angry Sam tells Ghostface to come and get me. To which Ghostface replies, with pleasure, before lunging out from behind the door. In Scream 2, when Ghostface calls Sidney at the sorority house, she challenges him with,
then why don't you show your face, you fucking coward?
My pleasure.
Now a distraught Sam, she goes into the room to talk to Tara, and she reveals that she left when Tara was younger because she discovered that she was the daughter of Billy Loomis. And with that makes her Sam Loomis, Dr. Samuel Lewis from the Halloween franchise. But we're seeing a trend in this film with all the Psycho references, which is going to tie into a future theory that we'll release next week. Sam Loomis in the movie Psycho is Marion Crane's boyfriend, who is portrayed by Janet Leigh. Janet Leigh is the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis, who, as we know, is frequently referenced after Sam bumps into her boyfriend Richie. This is similar to when Sid in Scream 1, when she runs out into the hall, she runs into boyfriend Billy.
After the attack, Sam wants to learn more about Ghostface from an expert. So, who better? She goes to Dewey's home. And he's living in a trailer, like in Scream 3.
Yeah, there's really no experts around. Everybody's kind of just got up and left, right?
Yeah. The only one left is Dewey.
Gonna have to say it again. Damn fine acting.
Oh yeah, this was his best performance yet in this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Agreed.
So we see a box on his bookshelf engraved with the name Tatum. Obviously, it's most likely her ashes. Tatum was his sister. You know, she died in the first Scream, but her name was never mentioned again.
Yeah, it was nice to come back around to this. Now, there is an Easter egg on here that has to be tied to something. On Dewey's refrigerator, there's about 8 or 9 pictures, and 6 of them are of dogs. Later on, when we fast forward to Judy Hicks' house, there's a painting of a dog. I don't know what this means, so if you do, please leave it in the comments.
After Sam and Richie leave, Dewey begins making phone calls to warn others of Ghostface's return. As he's scrolling through his phone, we can see Kirby Reed is one of his contacts.
Woohoo, a second time.
When Dewey calls Sidney, he asks how Mark is doing. This would mean that Sidney married Mark Kincaid, the detective from Scream 3.
Yeah, I always kind of liked them together. They just had chemistry.
But you didn't like him. You said he was the killer.
I know. Didn't you hear me celebrate at the beginning of this? I finally got it right. Finally. It only took me 25 years to figure it out on the first try.
Sam, Richie, and Dewey meet up with Tara's friends at the Meeks house, where Mindy explains the rules of a requel. During the conversation, there's mention of the 8th Stab movie, which was directed by the Knives Out guy. Stab 8 is loathed by fans because Rian Johnson changed the formula of the films and introduced new, unlikable characters, just like he did with Star Wars The Last Jedi, also the 8th film in the franchise.
Mindy then name drops various franchises that have had requels in the past, such as Jurassic Park, Terminator, Halloween, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Flatliners, Child's Play, which I liked, and then that god-awful piece of shit Black Christmas. Saw is also mentioned. Jordan Peele is name-dropped in this conversation. In the background, we see 2 posters on the wall, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956, and Skull from 1965. After Mindy reveals who she thinks the killer is, Sam leaves in a huff. She gets distracted by her father, Billy.
We should probably mention that Sam sees her dead father
Sitting in the back seat, and she almost blows through a stop sign and is almost hit by an oncoming car. Similar to the last film where Kirby was driving, talking about Ghostface with Jill and Olivia, and blows through a stop sign and almost gets hit by a car.
Yeah, she was a terrible driver.
She was.
Later on, we arrive at the Hicks home. Wes Hicks goes to take a shower while Judy heads out. We see Wes enter the shower similar to how Marion Crane did in Psycho before being killed.
This can go three ways. This is more of a Easter egg for Christina getting killed at the beginning of Scream 3. Or Heather Graham getting offed in the Stab movie.
I can see that. Ghostface calls Judy Hicks while she's driving and reveals his opportunity to kill Wes while asking if she had ever seen the movie Psycho. Say so. After his shower, Wes finds a note on the fridge stating that there is lemon squares in the fridge. If you'll recall, those are the ones that Gail said tasted like ass.
So now we're really, if you're still watching at this point, you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have been because we've
Shut
already
it off.
said a lot, but you should definitely shut it off now because this is the end.
That's it.
This is the end game, and we are going to spoil everything.
You are no longer in a safe zone.
After the Hicks are slaughtered, Gail arrives in Woodsboro wearing a similar red outfit that she wore in Scream 1. We return to the hospital where we see Tara watching Dawson's Creek, episode 11 from season 1, The Scare. This is the episode in the series that spoofs Scream. In that episode, we see a Scream poster on Dawson's wall. Joshua Jackson would appear in Scream 2. Scott Foley, who played Roman, Sid's brother in Scream 3, is in this episode of Dawson's Creek.
Not only is this Dawson's Creek episode written by Kevin Williamson, the writer of the original second and fourth Scream films, he also serves as the producer on this film, where many of the crew members worked on Dawson's Creek, also worked on this film. During the hospital siege, Tara is hiding with a phone in her hand when Richie pops his head into the room and gets donked on the head with the phone. And just before he is attacked by Ghostface, he asks, "Did you just hit me with the phone?" Which is a nod to one of Stu's most famous lines.
Fucking hit me with the phone, dick!
Now, as I mentioned, Richie is attacked by Ghostface, and his forearm is slashed in a similar fashion that Derek and Jill were in Scream 2 and Scream 4. Now, during several of these scenes I mentioned before, there was another throwback to the killers in this. Richie is wearing a blue flannel. Jill wears a blue flannel in Scream 4. Later that night, Amber is throwing a memorial party for Wes. We see a banner for Wes prominently hung in one of the rooms throughout the party and throughout the remainder of the film. We also see Chad toasting Wes. This wasn't for Wes Hicks. This was the on-screen memorial for Wes Craven,
who we lost in 2015. When they run out of beer, Amber heads down to the basement to get more. She plays with a light switch at first, just like Tatum does in the first film when entering the garage to get more beer.
I wanted to hear some silly line. I spit on your garage. I love that line.
Liv, Chad's girlfriend, storms off at the party. Well, I mean, he did say she might be the killer, so I would get a little mad too. Chad decides to go find Liv. Mindy asks if he's going to at least grab a weapon, and he grabs a candlestick. And since this is a meta whodunit, and he's wearing yellow, I think he's Colonel Mustard from Clue. But later sends him a text message to find her. Chad uses a tracking app on his phone that beeps as he gets closer to her location. The sound used in the app is the tracking sound of the Arius tracker used in the Aliens franchise.
7. 6.
Can't be, that's inside the room.
It's reading right, man, look.
Well, you're not reading it right.
Sam, Tara, and Richie are forced to head to the party to get Tara's spare inhaler. After Richie clears out the party guests, he's looking for beer and says, "I'll be right back," to Mindy before going into the basement. Stu, the killer in Scream 1, says that same line to Randy, who was Mindy's uncle. Throughout the party, Mindy is watching Stab 1, and we arrive to the scene where she's watching Randy, who is watching Halloween in that similar green shirt that we always see. When Mindy's left alone, like Randy was in Scream 1, and begins yelling at Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around while Ghostface sneaks up behind him, Mindy echoes the same instructions to the person playing her uncle as Ghostface sneaks up behind her.
So the result of Chad's tracking app led to him getting stabbed. Almost an Easter egg on my list was Ghostface chasing after him in a similar fashion that Ghostface chased Casey Becker. Left that off, though. Liv runs into the house with Chad's blood on her hands. She's accused of being the killer, just like Cotton was in Scream 2 when he runs into Gale with blood on his hands after having just found a bloody Dewey. Things go to hell here because now we get our killer reveal and Amber is the killer. I was right. As Amber stalks the remaining survivors, Sam finds Tara bound and left in a closet in a similar fashion to Neil Prescott in the original Scream. When Sidney and Gale arrive, we see Sid wearing the same leather jacket that she wore in the finale of Scream 2. Amber stumbles out of the house when she realizes that they are there, mimicking Dewey coming out of the house in Scream 1 as Sidney walked up towards the front door.
After Dewey was stabbed.
After Amber and Richie round up Sam, Sid, and Gale, Amber begins a monologue. Don't they all?
They do. This is why they end up in trouble, because they can't shut up.
Now, Amber reveals why she needed Sidney to return to Woodsboro. You can't have a bona fide Halloween without Jamie Lee, which is a reference to Halloween 2018.
Amber also mimics the score from the Psycho shower scene during her monologue. I mean, haven't we all done that in life? I feel like we all have.
Maybe.
As the plan begins to go off track and Richie tries to kill Sam, Sam reaches for an umbrella, and this is a callback to Sid stabbing Billy with an umbrella when she pops out of the closet. When Sam gains the upper hand, we see a close-up shot of the knife in her hand before she stabs Richie. This is a reference to the close-up shot of the knife in Billy's hand before he stabbed Casey in Scream 1. After Sam kills Richie, and man, did she kill him. She went batshit on him. The frenzied attacks in this movie?
Yep.
They were frenzied. Very frenzied.
People were angry.
They were. Anyway, she cleans the blood off of the knife with her hand like the killers always do, in a similar fashion to her father. Both Chad and Mindy survive, and we see them being taken out on stretchers with injuries echoing Dewey and Randy's survival from Ghostface from Scream 1. They exchange a thumbs up similar to the other films.
As the film wraps, we see a reporter wearing a similar yellow outfit that Gale wears in Scream 1, also worn by Jennifer Jolie in Part 3. And in closing, we started out with a great Easter egg on the 25 years of Scream, and we're going to end on a good one. We get to see the memorial words of "For Wes" to the sounds of birds chirping. Wes was a bird watcher. He loved to do that. It was one of his favorite hobbies, and it's just a sweet send-off.
Okay, so if you're still with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and share.
Yes. We're actually off to go see Scream again.
We are, so we have to go.
Yes. If you know of any other Easter eggs that we did not cover, please leave them down in the comments and tell us what you think of the movie.